Welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins. It's a real pleasure to be joined today here on the show by Charli Hunt. Charli, you're very welcome. Let's begin by asking you, maybe introduce yourself. Tell us all about proof content and the world that you're involved in. So over to you, Charli.
Well, thanks for having me. So Proof Content, I founded it about 12 years ago while I was at uni. Originally, we started by writing huge amounts of content very quickly. So we had 150 freelance writers on the books. And we now focus much more on key messaging and positioning. So helping brands to find their position in the market and then define that very clearly in a way that resonates with their target audience and is very memorable as well. Because when you're talking to clients, they aren't always ready to buy, so you need to be memorable when they are.
Now, your tagline is speak clearer, not louder, which I love. And the fact that you're focused in the content world, it's a world I'm immersed in on a daily basis. So I'm really interested in understanding maybe some of the changes that you've seen. We're in an artificial intelligence world. We've got human experts. We've got people that think it's all going down the AI route. We've got people thinking there's no way. You need the experts in here to create that compelling content. You've also experienced growth in your business, managing lots of people. I believe you've even got a pet name for your own AI. But you can tell us maybe a little bit more about that, because I'm imagining the content business in the same way you said in your introduction. It's changing a little bit, isn't it? We're going through change again in a fairly big way, and getting your content to resonate, to cut through, and to engage an audience is probably trickier now than it's ever been. But the tools are probably better than they've ever been too. So what's your view on it anyway?
So there's the speak clearer, not louder actually did come out of AI. I remember I had to beg very hard to get access to GPT 4 years ago. I managed to find someone's email address at OpenAI and I harassed him into giving me access. And I remember thinking, God, this will never kind of take over copywriting. And now here we are. I think, there are loads of things that we would have done for clients before that they can now do themselves. There are loads of things that we don't have to charge as much money for because we can do a lot of the research using AI, obviously fact checking it as well. And yeah, so I think for me, it's such an interesting time to be in content. I think it will be interesting to see where SEO goes. And obviously content is a huge part of SEO, and SEO is a huge part of content, web content anyway. And this is where the speak clearer, not louder comes from. There's so much SEO content out there, and so many clients think, okay, we have a content problem, let's produce more content. But it's not about producing more content. It's about producing better content. And obviously Google's going that way too. It wants to pick up the best content rather than, I mean, even the changes we've seen recently, it's the big sites aren't kind of, just because you've got a great domain ranking doesn't mean you're necessarily the one that's picked to talk about that topic anymore. So yeah, so I think it's a really interesting time. AI, we use it all the time. Our AI is called Pudding. We've also got one called Mixing Bowl, one called Sprinkles. I'm very lucky in that my business partner is a coder, so he's very good at all this stuff. And yeah, I think it's such an exciting time. It's such a scary time. I don't think we know what content will look like in 4 years' time. I don't imagine humans will be doing a huge amount of writing. I think they'll be doing prompting and strategic stuff and editing. But I think if we judge AI by how it is now, I just think it's pointless. We have no idea what it's going to look like in 4 years, but it will look a lot better than it does now.
Yeah, it's a very astute point that you make, because it's a bit like the old conversation that if you go to university today, college today, to do a computer science degree, by the time you finish the degree, it's all changed anyway. Now, there is still a benefit to that, and there is still a way of understanding the content world today. But you're right, the crystal ball for 4 years' time or 14 years' time is very, very hazy at the best of times, because this AI has really grown tremendously fast, hasn't it? It kind of, I know you were sort of getting early access 4 years ago. You're obviously in there early, but the iterations and the things that we're able to do with it now compared to when it first came out, and we're not even talking about video or image manipulation, just in terms of text and articles and content, and almost having this research assistant with you full time now.
So AI is not really the kind of, it's probably just the cherry on top of what we offer. We just use it in our positioning and key messaging. We just use it I guess, well, it helps us be a lot more creative because it gets us out of the rut of thinking like a human. It can help us, it doesn't get tired. So we'll be in brainstorming meetings for hours and we'll get tired. AI can just keep going. And so it really helps us to think more creatively and think differently. But I don't think that's all we have to offer as an agency. I think the reason clients hire us is because it's the very strategic work. So you need someone who A, has the time to do it, and B, can come in and look at your industry, kind of take a step back from your company and your industry. And also it's our process. We have quite a clear process that helps you have those very concrete key messaging words rather than something that sounds lovely but maybe doesn't necessarily mean anything.
So let me expand on what you've said there, because on your website, I'm going to read a little bit of text from your website here, because you make a claim that there's 2.5 quintillion bytes of information uploaded. That definitely sounds like you've got a coder on staff, by the way. So that's clear. But that your perfect customers are drowning in information overload. That's a very sort of descriptive way of putting it. And to rise above that noise, you talk about that concrete positioning. Now, where does the human expert come into that then? Because you work with a lot of really talented writers, don't you? And what about linking the tone of voice, the style guide, what the brand is trying to say, and the audience they're trying to reach? Is that really almost a consultancy element to what you do then?
So we would call ourselves consultants when we're doing the positioning and key messaging stuff. So we do ongoing copywriting as well, and that's where we'd kind of think of ourselves as an agency. But yeah, in terms of the positioning and key messaging, you absolutely need a human element at the moment. Eventually, I don't know if we've been looking at whether we could put our process into GPT somehow, just to help people, because often startups will come to us and they can't afford our process. And that's annoyingly the time when you really need it, is when you're going for funding, or when you're not exactly sure who you are and what you're doing. So yeah, it's having those experts who can ask you the questions to tease out everything that they need, and also to just make sure that they know the questions to ask as well.
And some of your clients that you've worked with are pretty well-known brands too. I don't know if you want to get into any of them specifically here with our audience, but is there any common thread that some of these are struggling with at the moment, given the noisy digital landscape that's out there?
So there are two types of brands that we work with. So not kind of types, but I would categorize them into two. So one is where they have a very technical offering and they find it hard to explain what they do. So one of our clients, LexisNexis, they hire us to unlawyer their copy, and it's something that not all brands understand, and luckily LexisNexis really do. Lawyers are used to wading through really difficult pieces of, really difficult, huge swathes of text. That's what they do all day. But they're being paid to do that. They aren't being paid to read marketing and sales copy. So it's still really important to make it easy to understand, but also show that you have that expertise. So it's a really hard balance, but it's so gratifying when you get it right, because the results just are so clear.
No, and coming back to proof content, then, I mean, it's not like you've been doing this for a couple of years. You've been doing this business for a long time now, really, in the grand scheme of things. I think you're based in London.
Yeah.
And what made you decide? Because I know it wasn't the first thing you started doing, and obviously there's the educational side as well. But what was the catalyst? I'm always interested in understanding, to become a founder, to set up proof content. Where did that come from? What inspired you?
Oh, so I think I wrote my first business plan when I was 15. It was for an all-female taxi company. I've always known that I wanted to have a business. My dad had loads of businesses. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. So my great grandfather is William Foyle, who set up Foyles, the bookshop in London. So it's just kind of always been, I guess, been something I wanted to do. And yeah, while I was at uni, the opportunity presented itself. So I was freelancing and just writing and editing for different holiday companies. And someone I had worked with previously said, "Oh, we've got this 3,500-page website. Would you like to rewrite it?" And obviously I thought, oh, okay, I'm probably going to have to get some other people to help me with this. And that's where Proof Content was born. And we love still doing those big website rewrite projects and big content migrations. It's so gratifying because it's so scary. And it's such a crazy deadline always. But yeah, it's so nice to be able to put all the freelancers to work. There's lots of AI that we can use now to help speed it up and make it easier for the freelancers as well. And then we kind of control all the quality and all the project management in-house. So yeah, it's good. We've come a long way from there, but yeah, I think it was just kind of always on the cards for me having a business.
That's lovely. Thank you for joining those dots. And obviously, a family sort of tradition of the entrepreneurial spark there, and the bookshop in London, of course, and your studies and a little bit of freelancing. It's great to hear that story. So thank you for sharing that. But what about today? So you're heading into year 12 soon enough, I think. What inspires you today? Are the people that you admire? Is it the business itself? Like, what keeps you going today?
I think it's such an interesting industry to be in at the moment with AI. So that's part of it. I think the positioning and key messaging stuff I really love because we get to go inside businesses and we get so every business we look at, we think, oh, we should change that in our business. And there's so many amazing businesses that don't know how to explain how amazing they are. And it's the most gratifying experience helping them to pull that out and get that across to customers and get more customers and grow. And honestly, I can't imagine anything more interesting to be doing with my life.
Well, that's great to hear. And obviously, as a founder, as somebody running a business today, what advice have you picked up along the way, Charlie? What advice do you find yourself maybe sharing with other people? What's the advice that stayed with you that you think's really important?
So I think it's one of my mentors always says, you've got to listen. Somebody's got the information you need, but you don't know who, and they don't really know if they have it. So you've got to listen to everybody, but you've got to make sure you're taking the right information from them. So I think that's really important. I kind of grew up with a sort of like people around me being like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't need an MBA. I don't need to like learn from other people. I don't really need to read business books. But actually, you don't need to read every business book. But it's really important to kind of keep thinking ahead and seeing what other successful people have done, and learning from their mistakes and what they've done that's successful. And the other one my dad always says is, you have 4 jobs. You have to find great clients and keep them. You have to find great people and keep them. And it sounds so much easier when you kind of split it down into those 4 things. But that really is what an agency is. And sometimes it can be so easy to get lost in the weeds. But really, those are your 4 kind of KPIs as a business, as an agency owner, anyway.
I think Dad has summed it up pretty good there. I think
Yeah.
therefore they've gone in. I shall keep that. Thank you very much indeed. The other thing while we're talking here is about planning. Now, obviously, you're working with clients and brands, whether it's writing the big, content and copy for them, whether it's getting underneath how they're going to re-communicate their legal jargon for their customers. But how do you plan that? I mean, are you constantly looking for new business? Are you working with existing customers? Do you have to think 3 months, 6 months, 12 months in advance? Are you considering what your agency looks like in 12 months' time? What does your roadmap planning sort of structure looks like? And how do you think about the future horizon for proof content?
Well, I think I'm really lucky because I'm in lots of networks of agencies who are more successful than me. I'm in a networking group called Helm, which I really like. So it used to be the Supper Club. And I find that really, really helpful as well. I think the average business is something like 25 million turnover or 30 something turnover. And so, they're way ahead of me. And it's so, so helpful listening to people who've already done it, and everyone's so kind with giving advice. And part of that is that you're in a forum. So every month you meet for 3 to 4 hours and you all discuss the problem and what's going on with your businesses, and you all really get to know each other's businesses. And I think I probably did that before, kind of thinking about the business, but it just helps you when you've got a month or a week of kind of being so bogged down in the weeds of the business. It's so important to kind of come out of that. But I think I've always loved talking about business. So I think, yeah, I talk about it with most people, and that just gives you ideas. I think like listening to podcasts, reading business books, meeting interesting people, going to conferences about things that are totally outside of what you're doing. I think all of those things are really important, and you have to keep in at the moment. It's so important to think about the future. I think any agency that thinks, oh, AI can't do what we're doing, and I'm just going to carry on how I am now, I'm not sure that's going to work in the next few years.
Yeah, and just on that point, do you feel that we're past that point where people are frightened that it's going to take away their business, it's going to take away the jobs? Do you think that the agencies that are getting it right are really embracing AI and it's becoming part of their workflow? It's actually helping them to go faster, broader, deeper. Or do you think there's still a huge learning curve and we're still very early? What does that look like from your sort of perspective?
I think we're still very early. I'm always surprised by how many people are like, oh, do you use AI in your business? Because to me, it's like asking someone if you use Google in your business. It's kind of just second nature now. But these things, they do take time to adopt, but I think it's so important. I think you have to dedicate some time to it. And it took a while to get some of the writers on my team to adopt it. And I understand why, because you have your workflow and it feels disturbing to your workflow to kind of have to add something else in. But I think if you want to carry on being really good at what you do, you're going to have to use AI, because otherwise everybody else is going to kind of go past you at some point. But yeah, I think it's interesting how many people are not adopting it, either out of fear or because they started using it and then they got busy. But I think this is one of those things that's for future thinking that you just have to do. You have to fit it in somehow.
100%. I agree with that. And before we finish up today, Charlie, is there anything else, any other topic that we haven't talked about that you think is important to raise with our worldwide audience? Now, it might be something we have touched on that you want to double down on. And secondly, and importantly, before we wrap up, I also want you to maybe share, how do people get in touch with Proof Content? If people want to find out more about what you do and reach out, where's the best place to point people to?
I think I would really just love to hear what you think about AI and agencies. Do you think that the adoption is too low at the moment? And do you think it's kind of a threat to the future of agencies?
Well, it's always good to turn the question round. And I think my view would be, Charlie, that it, honestly, I think a lot of agencies today are somewhere between using it effectively or using it and pretending they're not using it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's like you were saying, it's a bit like asking somebody, well, do you use Google? Whether you use the chat GPT or any of the AI tools that are out there. And I think, from what you're saying as well, I think there is definitely a value in being able to work with people that understand the limitations currently, the huge benefits that are available currently. You mentioned the term fact checking earlier on in our discussion today, and I think that's really, really important too. But I think at the moment, it's not a hands off service. It's not a this can just take over from here. And I think a lot of brands, companies are realizing that. So having those, I'm going to use the word agile agencies that can actually navigate those waters, use it to the benefit, and actually bring true value to a company or a brand are the ones that are going to stand out and survive and thrive, I think. And actually, AI will be a great power to their business, to their bottom line, to their client reach, to their client retention. And of course, some will fall by the wayside because if you're producing average content in a noisy environment, you're just not going to be around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
And what about people reaching out if they want to find out more about all your great services of proof content?
Yeah, so probably best place to find me is LinkedIn. So I'm Charli with no E, annoyingly, and then Hunt, and then or it's proofcontent.com. I did joke that I'm going to change my name to eCharli because we've got a SaaS company that we're building as well. So once we get more deep into the tech, I'm going to be eCharli.
Very, very good. And of course, you're building another company while you're doing everything else. Of course, you are. That brings us nicely to the end of this episode of the Global Discussion. Thanks for watching and listening to this episode wherever you are around the world. Make sure that you follow, like, subscribe, do everything I need you to do to help support the show. Go and check out everything that Proof Content are doing and everything that Charli, the team, and the AI called Pudding are involved in, and maybe the new business that's coming down the tracks as well. Thanks for listening. Join me back here for some more discussions with creatives and leaders and thinkers just like Charli. Thank you, Charli. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.